Okay, so let's just get right into it. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I am your host, and I'm here with our resident expert.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here for this one.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today because, well, usually on this show, we spend our time digging into, I don't know, white papers or analyzing business trends.
Right, the heavy text-based stuff.
Exactly. We do these historical deep dives where we have to sift through just hundreds of pages of dense text. But
Today
today,
is very different.
it is completely different. Today, we are looking at a file that is just simply titled brains.pdf.
Brains with a Z.
With a Z, yes. And honestly, it is probably the most complex object in the known universe, just sitting right there on my hard drive.
It really is. And yet, when you open this file, it looks surprisingly quiet.
Quiet is a good word for it.
Yeah, there is no text, there is no abstract, no introduction. It is just a series of these spectral, high-contrast black and white images.
Right. It's ghostly. That was my first thought. It's literally a series of slices through a human head.
Slices, yes.
And I think that's the hook for me right off the bat. Our mission today is to figure out what we're looking at because we are so used to seeing people from the outside, faces, expressions.
The surface-level stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But this document, it forces us to look at the engine room. We are looking at the actual hardware of consciousness, slice by slice.
It is a very intimate perspective.
It feels almost invasive, honestly, but in a really fascinating way.
That is a great way to frame it. The engine room. We often talk about the mind as this abstract concept.
Right, like thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. Thoughts, memories, the sort of software of the self. But what we have in front of us today in these scans is the physical reality of that.
The wetware.
The wetware, exactly. And to your point about the ghostly aesthetic, that is actually a very specific byproduct of how this imaging works.
Because it's not a photograph?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We are looking at magnetic resonance imaging, MRI.
Right, and I want to get into that immediately. Because I think people, and I used to do this too, assume an MRI is just a fancy X-ray.
Right. A very common misconception.
But it's not, is it? We aren't looking at shadows cast by bone here.
No, not even close. If this were an X-ray or a CT scan, the bone of the skull would be bright white.
They're glowing.
Exactly. And the brain itself would just be this vague, featureless gray mush inside. You wouldn't see any of this exquisite detail.
But here, the detail inside this soft tissue is unbelievable. You can see patterns and folds.
That is because MRI is fundamentally a map of water.
A map of water. Okay, you're going to have to break that down for me.
Sure.
How do we get from a literal glass of water to these incredibly detailed pictures of a frontal lobe?
Well, it comes down to quantum mechanics, but we can simplify it.
Please do.
So your body is mostly water, right? And water molecules contain hydrogen protons.
Okay, tracking with you.
When you slide a person into that giant MRI donut, you're putting them inside a massive magnetic field.
The big, loud tube.
The big load, too, yes. That magnetic field is so strong, it forces all those billions of protons in your brain to align.
Like tiny compass needles.
Perfect analogy. Tiny compass needles all pointing north.
Okay, so step one, magnetize the human. Everyone lines up.
Exactly. Then the machine pulses a radio wave at a very specific frequency.
And what does that do?
It knocks those protons out of alignment. It basically tips them over.
Okay.
And when that radio pulse stops, the protons snap back to their original position pointing north again.
Right.
As they snap back, they release a tiny burst of energy, a radio signal of their own, and the machine listens for that echo.
Wait, so the machine is literally listening to the water in your brain, singing back to it.
That is a remarkably beautiful way to put it. Yes, it listens to the water sing.
That is wild.
And here is the key to the whole thing. Protons in fats sing differently than protons in water.
They sound different to the machine.
Yes, or protons in bone or in white matter. They all snap back at slightly different speeds.
Oh, I see.
The computer takes all those tiny differences in timing and intensity and converts them into the grayscale image we are looking at.
So where I see bright white or dark gray or pitch black, I'm actually seeing different types of biological material resonating.
Exactly. It recontextualizes the whole PDF, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at a picture. I'm looking at a resonance map of someone's head.
Precisely.
So before we start pointing out the weird shapes and the specific structures, help us orient ourselves in this file.
Sure thing.
Because scrolling through this PDF, some of these images look like side profiles, like a silhouette of a face.
Right.
And others look like, well, like Rorschach tests or maps of a very strange island chain from above.
So we have two main anatomical perspectives in this specific file. You have the sagittal view and the axial view.
Okay, sagittal and axial. I have definitely heard those terms in medical dramas, but I never really knew what they meant.
We can break it down very simply.
Lay it on me.
Think of it this way. Imagine you have a hot dog bun.
Okay, I've got a hot dog bun.
If you slice it the way you normally would to put a hot dog inside it, right down the long axis, separating the left half from the right half.
That is a sagittal view.
Exactly. It's a side profile. It lets you see the structure from the nose all the way back to the neck, looking at the brain from the side.
Got it. So when I'm scrolling through the PDF and I see what looks like a person's profile, the nose, the chin, the spine,
The side view?
the Shakespeare holding a skull angle. That's the hot dog cut. That's sagittal.
Precisely. The word actually comes from the Latin sagitta, meaning arrow, like an arrow shot straight through the face.
Okay, that's a bit graphic, but it works. It sticks in the memory.
Now switch gears. Imagine a loaf of bread.
A loaf of bread.
Okay. If you put that loaf of bread in a slicer, you are cutting it into individual slices from the top crust down to the bottom.
Like standard sandwich slices.
Right. In medical imaging, we usually go from feet to head or head to feet. But thinking of it as horizontal slices through the skull, that is the axial view.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So the loaf of bread is axial. The hot dog bun is sagittal.
You've got it.
That actually helps a lot because looking at these axial scans, without that context, they just look like weird blobs in a circle.
They do.
But knowing it's a top-down map of the head helps me visualize exactly where I am in the stack as I scroll.
And what is really fascinating here is that to understand the anatomy, you as the observer have to mentally combine them.
Build the 3D model in your head.
Exactly. A single slice is merely two-dimensional, but the brain is a three-dimensional structure. You have to triangulate.
And that's what we are going to do today for you listening right now. We are going to take a tour.
A guided tour of your own head.
Yes. We are going to start at the front, go right through the face into the cortex, dive into the deep core, and really try to understand what makes us us.
It is the ultimate exploration.
Because, and this is the part that still just blows my mind, every thought I have, every memory of my childhood, every time I get hungry or angry.
It is all happening right there.
All of it is encoded in these gray, squishy structures we are staring at on screen.
It truly is the architecture of you. Everything you are is physically encoded in these folds and pathways.
So let's jump in. I want to start with the face.
Gateway.
Yeah, the gateway.
Yeah.
Because even though this is a brain scan, you can clearly see the ghost of the person in those sagittal images.
You certainly can. If you look at the lower scans or the ones right near the midline in the sagittal view, the profile is striking.
It's undeniably human.
You see the bridge of the nose, the lips, and the chin. I think it really grounds the abstract data in humanity.
It does. It's kind of eerie, isn't it? It looks like a phantom just floating in the blackness.
It is a bit haunting.
But what stands out to me even more is what is right behind the face.
Ah, you noticed the voids.
Yeah, there are these massive black empty spaces behind the nose and specifically above the eyebrows in the forehead area.
The paranasal sinuses.
They are just pitch black. It honestly looks like missing data, like someone took a digital eraser to the scan.
It does look like a glitch, but connecting back to the physics lesson from a minute ago, why do you think they are black?
Oh, right. Because MRI only sees water and soft tissue.
Right, exactly.
And the sinuses are just filled with air.
Right. Air has incredibly low density and practically no water content.
So there are no protons to sing back to the machine.
Precisely. It doesn't resonate with the magnetic pulses, so it returns absolutely zero signal, a complete signal void.
But it's crazy how much space they take up. Why do we have such huge holes right in the middle of our skull?
Evolutionarily, they solved a massive engineering problem for us.
Weight reduction, right?
Yes. If your skull was solid, bone all the way through your head would be incredibly heavy.
Like carrying a bowling ball on a toothpick.
Exactly. You would need massive, thick neck muscles just to keep your head upright and look around. The sinuses reduce the overall weight of the skull significantly.
So they are literally weight reduction chambers built into the chassis.
They are, but they also serve as climate control systems.
Climate control. How so?
If you look closely at the nasal cavity in the scan, do you see those little shelf-like structures poking into the black space?
Let me look. Yeah, they look like little curled fingers or tiny ridges on the inside of the nose.
Those are called the turbinates.
Turbinates. Sounds like a jet engine part.
Functionally, it kind of is. Their job is to spin the air you breathe in. They create turbulence.
So the air bounces around more.
Right. That way the air hits the warm, wet tissue lining the inside of your nose before it travels down to your lungs.
Ah, so it humidifies it.
Humidifies and warms the air. It is a biological HVAC system built right into your face.
So if I didn't have those big black voids and those little spinning ridges, I would be breathing freezing cold, dry air directly into my delicate lungs.
And your head would weigh about 20 pounds more.
That sounds miserable.
And your voice would sound completely different too.
Really?
Yes. The sinuses act as resonance chambers for your vocal cords. Without them, you would sound incredibly flat and muffled.
Like when you have a really bad cold and you're all stuffed up?
Exactly. That is exactly what happens when those chambers fill with fluid. You lose the resonance.
Okay, that makes total sense. Moving up from the empty air pockets, so let's talk about the eyes.
The orbits.
Yes.
Because I found the axial slices, the loaf of bread slices that slice right horizontally through the eye level, to be practically sci-fi.
It is a very striking visual on an MRI.
It really is. You see these two perfect, bright, spherical globes sitting right at the front of the face.
Bright because they're filled with fluid, vitreous humor.
Right, more water. And you can even see the lens, this little distinct, harder structure, right at the very front of the eyeball.
The detail is amazing.
But what really caught my attention is what is directly behind the eye.
Here is where the anatomy gets deeply interesting. You are looking at the optic nerve.
Yeah, it's like this thick white cable running from the back of the eyeball straight back into the brain tissue.
Very thick.
It looks industrial, like a heavy-duty HDMI cable or something. It forms a distinct V shape pointing straight toward the center of the head.
That is a very apt comparison. That cable, the optic nerve, is transmitting massive amounts of visual data constantly.
I bet. High-resolution video all day long.
But here is a biological fact that might completely change how you see the world.
Okay, hit me.
The retina at the back of the eye and that optic nerve we are looking at, they are not just connected to the brain.
What do you mean?
They are technically part of the brain.
Wait, unpack that. I always thought the eye was basically a peripheral sensor, like a webcam plugged into a computer.
That is a common intuition, absolutely. But embryologically, when you were developing in the womb, the brain tissue actually outpouched.
How pouched?
It migrated forward out of the skull cavity to form the optic nerve and the retina.
No way.
Yes. So when you look deeply into someone's eyes, you are literally looking at the only visible part of their central nervous system.
You are seeing their brain.
You are seeing a piece of their brain that is visible from the outside.
That is wild. So the eye isn't a camera sent out to take pictures. It's a literal piece of the brain that just decided to take a field trip to the surface of the face.
That is exactly what it is. And that cable you see in the scan is thick because visual processing requires incredible bandwidth.
Right.
The human brain dedicates a huge percentage of its real estate just to processing what those two fluid-filled spheres are sending it every millisecond.
It's a prioritizing vision above almost everything else.
And if you follow that V shape backward in the axial scan, you can actually see exactly where the two nerves meet in the middle.
The point of the V.
Yes, the optic chiasm. That is the junction where the nerves cross.
Why do they cross?
Information from your left eye gets routed to the right side of your visual cortex at the back of your brain, and vice versa. It is a physical, hardwired sorting station for light.
So cool. You can also see these tiny little bands alongside the eyes in the scan. They look like little delicate straps holding the sphere in place.
Ah, the extraocular muscles. Specifically the rectus muscle.
Rectus muscles.
Those are the tiny muscles that let you roll your eyes when someone makes a bad joke.
I will definitely keep that in mind. But seeing them there, just these thin little gray straps gripping the eyeball, it makes you realize how mechanical we really are.
We are biomechanical machines.
It's literally just pulleys and levers.
It is biological engineering at its absolute finest. It's a push-pull system. To look left one, muscle contracts and pulls, while the opposing muscle relaxes to let it happen.
Simple mechanics allowing for complex vision.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move past the face and the eyes now. Let's get to the main event of the whole file.
The main processor.
Yes. The walnut. The big wrinkly thing on top.
The cerebrum, specifically the neocortex.
Right, the cerebrum. When we look at the top-down views, the axial scans near the top of the head, or even the side views, the texture is unmistakable.
Very iconic.
It's incredibly wrinkly. It's folded back on itself over and over. It has these prominent ridges and deep valleys. You call them gyri and sulci.
Correct. The ridges, the bumps on the surface are called gyri. The grooves or the deep valleys between them are the sulci.
So I have to ask the classic question here. Why isn't it smooth?
It's a great question.
I mean, you look at other organs. The heart is relatively smooth. The liver is very smooth. Why does the human brain look like a crumpled up piece of paper?
It ultimately comes down to a massive packaging problem. That is the best way to describe
A
it.
packaging problem.
The neocortex, the outer sheet of the brain, where all the high-level thinking, planning, language, and sensory processing happens, is structurally a flat sheet.
Wait, a flat sheet. It doesn't look flat at all.
It doesn't look flat because it's folded.
Yeah.
But if you could theoretically take a human brain and somehow iron that outer layer out perfectly flat.
Which I definitely do not recommend anyone try doing.
No, definitely not. But if you did, that sheet of tissue would be about the size of a large pillowcase
A pillowcase.
or a small tablecloth. It's roughly 2,500 square centimeters of tissue.
Whoa. Okay, so for everyone listening, you currently have a small tablecloth worth of computing power shoved inside your skull.
Yes, you do. But as you know, the skull is relatively small.
Right.
Crucially, the human head has to be small enough to safely fit through the birth canal.
Ah, right, the biological constraint.
So evolution's brilliant solution to this spatial constraint was simply to crumple the sheet up, fold it in on itself over and over.
Just jam it in there.
By folding it so intensely, you basically triple the amount of surface area that can fit inside that confined, rigid space.
So the wrinkles aren't just for show. They are a very practical way to pack way more horsepower into the exact same chassis.
Precisely. We call that process gyrification.
Mm-hmm.
And the pattern of those folds isn't completely random either.
It's not. I assumed it was like a fingerprint, just totally random wrinkling.
While there is definitely some minor variation from person to person, the major valleys, the deep primary sulci, are in the exact same place for everyone.
Like landmarks.
Yes. They serve as reliable boundaries separating the different functional lobes of the brain, the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the specific coloring we see in these axial slices. Because this is where a very famous phrase comes from, right?
Yeah. You're referring to gray matter.
Gray matter, exactly.
Yeah.
I see a distinct darker rim following the folds around the very edge of the brain, and then a lighter, almost whitish solid core on the inside.
Yes. And in these specific structural MRI sequences, that contrast is intentionally very distinct.
Really coughs.
The outer rim, that darker ribbon of tissue, perfectly following every single fold that is the gray matter. The thicker inner part is the white matter.
So what's the actual difference between them? Is one more important than the other?
They are equally important.
Because I feel like pop culture always tells us using your gray matter is the key to being smart. It gets all the glory.
It does get the glory, but they serve very different and complementary functions. Both are absolutely vital.
Break it down for us.
Think of the gray matter, that thin, outer dark rim, as the cities.
The cities.
That is where the actual cell bodies are located. That is where the neurons themselves live and where the active computation happens. If you are doing complex math or smelling a familiar flower or actively recognizing a friend's face, the real energetic work is happening right there in that outer gray ribbon.
Okay, so the gray matter is the CPU. It's the actual processing chips.
Right, exactly. Now, the white matter, the lighter inner core beneath it, that is the cabling.
The cables.
Yes. It appears white on an anatomical scan because the axons, the long physical wires connecting the neurons together, are thickly coated in something called myelin.
Myelin. What is that?
Myelin is a fatty lipid substance that wraps around the nerve fiber. It acts as biological insulation, much like the plastic rubber coating on a copper electrical wire,
To keep the signal from leaking out.
and to vastly speed up how fast the electrical signal can travel. And because fat shows up bright and light on these specific MRI scans, we see a massive white core.
So the inside of the human brain is basically just a massive server farm's cable management system.
That is a completely perfect analogy. The gray matter represents the individual cities where the people live and work and generate ideas. The white matter is the sprawling interstate highway system, physically connecting all those separate cities together so they can trade information.
That makes so much visual sense.
If you sustain damage to the gray matter, you lose the raw processing power in that spot, the ability to generate the specific thought or movement.
Okay.
But if you damage the white matter, the cities might be perfectly fine, but they completely lose the ability to talk to each other. The network goes down.
And just looking at these scans, the ratio is honestly surprising to me. There is a lot of white matter in there.
A tremendous amount, yes.
It seems like the physical connections take up just as much volume as the actual processors do.
Absolutely they do, because in neural networks, connectivity is exactly what gives rise to intelligence and complexity.
Well, you need the network.
You can have the most powerful processors in the world, but if they aren't networked together rapidly, you don't get the internet. You just have a room full of lonely, isolated calculators.
Lonely calculators. That's a vividly sad image.
It is.
But speaking of separation and isolation, we really have to talk about the big divide.
Ah, the longitudinal fissure.
Right. In the axial view, looking straight down from the top, there's a huge, deep, dark canyon running right down the center line from front to back.
The great divide of the brain.
It genuinely looks like we have two completely separate brains just sitting next to each other inside the skull.
In many structural and functional ways we actually do, we have two distinct hemispheres, left and right.
And that canyon, that fissure, it goes really deep.
It separates them almost completely down to the core.
So they are actually physically separate entities up there.
For the vast majority of their surface area, yes, they are distinct functioning halves.
Wow.
But crucially, they are not totally isolated from one another. And this naturally brings us to the next section of our structural tour.
Oh, I know where we're going.
It is probably one of my absolute favorite physiological structures to spot on any MRI.
We're going deep, aren't we? We are finally going to the core.
We are diving deep into the center.
Okay, so sticking with the axial, the top-down view just for a second longer.
Sure.
As you slowly scroll down from the top of the head, you hit the middle depth, and suddenly these dark, stark shapes appear right in the center.
Right in the middle of the white matter.
To me, they look like a butterfly spreading its wings. Or maybe an X shape. Sometimes, depending on the slice, they literally just look like weird ink blots.
Those dark voids are the ventricles.
Ventricles, okay. I usually only hear that specific word associated with the heart.
It's the exact same anatomical concept. The word simply means a cavity or an open chamber inside an organ.
Okay.
But in the brain, they certainly aren't pumping blood. They are entirely different. They are fluid-filled reservoirs.
And they show up completely black on the scan, just like the sinus air pockets we talked about earlier.
Right, because they are filled with liquid. Cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, to be specific.
CSF, okay.
Depending on the exact MRI settings, fluid can sometimes be tuned to look bright white.
Uh-huh.
But here in this sequence, they stand out perfectly as these distinct black voids right in the center of the brain.
So the obvious question here, why on earth do we have a literal dark lake right in the exact middle of our brain?
It serves two primary, incredibly essential reasons: protection and plumbing.
Protection and plumbing. Explain the protection part first.
Well, the brain itself is extremely soft. You used the word squishy earlier, and that is highly medically accurate.
Squishy is a medical term now.
Functionally, yes. It has the physical consistency of very soft tofu or maybe a thick gelatin custard.
Okay.
If you were to put a block of very soft tofu into a hard glass jar and just shook it around, it would immediately smash against the hard sides and turn into total mush.
Right. Even gravity alone sitting on a table would probably warp it over time.
Exactly. A typical adult human brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms in normal air.
That's pretty heavy for soft tissue.
It's heavy enough that if it sat unsupported, it would slowly crush the delicate blood vessels located at the base of the skull just from its own sheer weight.
Oh, wow.
But if you take that jar, fill it completely with water, and then carefully place the block of tofu inside, it floats.
Archimedes' principle at work. Displacement.
You've got it. Because the brain is fully immersed in that cerebrospinal fluid inside the ventricles and also coating the entire outside surface, it becomes neutrally buoyant.
It floats in the skull.
Its effective relative weight drops from 1,400 grams down to roughly 50 grams.
That is just incredibly clever biology. So we basically have built-in hydraulic shock absorbers. The brain is literally floating inside the bony armor of the skull.
Floating safely suspended, exactly. And the second critical function is the plumbing aspect.
How does the plumbing work?
The brain is a massively high-energy machine. It consumes 20% of your body's energy. And because it works so hard, it constantly creates a lot of metabolic waste products.
Like exhaust fumes from the engine.
Right. Leftover proteins, cellular toxins, things that need to be cleared out. The CSF constantly circulates through those ventricles, washes all those waste products away, and safely drains them out into the bloodstream.
So it's a self-cleaning oven.
It's the nighttime cleaning crew. In fact, this flushing process increases dramatically while you are in deep sleep.
So those weird ink blot butterfly shapes in the middle of the scan are actually the central water treatment plant and the primary suspension system all rolled into one.
You could absolutely say that. And closely analyzing their specific shape is deeply important for doctors and radiologists.
Oh, really? Why?
If those ventricles look too abnormally large, or if they look compressed and squashed or heavily asymmetrical, it immediately tells you a lot about the internal pressure inside the head.
Like an early warning system.
It's a crucial physical barometer for overall brain health and identifying things like tumors or blockages.
Fascinating. Now let's dynamically switch back to the sagittal view, the side profile slice.
Right down the midline.
Because right directly above those dark ventricles, there is a structural feature that is completely impossible to miss.
It really stands out.
It is this thick, bright white, highly defined C-shaped band. To me, it looks like a large hook, or maybe the Nike swoosh logo if it was curled just a little bit more.
Ah, yes, that is the corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum. It is positioned dead center in the brain.
It is perfectly central. Remember just a minute ago how we said the two cortical hemispheres are largely separated by that deep, dark, longitudinal fissure?
Right, the two separate lonely brains.
The corpus callosum is the bridge that unites them.
The bridge.
It is a massive, dense bundle of white matter fibers, over 200 million individual, heavily myelinated axons that run transversely, physically connecting the entire left side to the entire right side.
So this is the primary high-speed data cable linking the two separated halves.
It is the only major high-capacity broadband connection they have.
Wow.
It actively allows the left hemisphere, which in most people handles processing language and speech, to instantly communicate with the right hemisphere, which might be simultaneously processing complex spatial awareness or emotional context.
So this specific swoosh shape is literally what lets your left hand finally know what your right hand is currently doing.
Literally, yes. And here is where the neurology gets profoundly interesting and maybe, honestly, a little bit spooky.
Spooky how? I love spooky.
There have been well-documented cases in modern medical history where this specific bridging structure was intentionally surgically cut by doctors.
Cut. Why would they ever sever the main cable?
Usually as a last resort treatment for terribly severe refractory epilepsy. The idea is to stop a massive electrical seizure from rapidly spreading from one hemisphere over to the other.
Okay, that makes medical sense. But what happens to the actual person when you sever the bridge?
Outwardly, they are still remarkably there. They can walk normally, they can talk, they still have their old memories.
That is surprising.
But under specific lab testing, they exhibit what is known as split brain syndrome. Because the connective bridge is totally gone, the two conscious halves can no longer actively share local information.
Give me an example of what that looks like.
Okay, if a researcher shows a picture of, say, a spoon exclusively to their left eye.
Which feeds into the right hemisphere, right?
Correct. And then the researcher asks the person verbally, "What do you see right now?" The person will confidently say, "I see nothing."
Why would they say nothing if the eye clearly saw the spoon?
Because the right hemisphere definitely saw the spoon, but the language and speaking center is trapped over in the left hemisphere.
Oh, wow.
And the right brain currently has absolutely zero physical way to send the message. It is a spoon across the missing bridge to the speaking part to say it out loud.
That is completely mind-bending.
But, and this is the absolute kicker here, if you then ask that same person to reach out with their left hand, which is controlled by the right brain, and pick up the object they just saw, they will perfectly pick up the spoon.
While still claiming verbally they didn't see anything.
Exactly.
So you literally have two entirely separate functional consciousnesses just trapped inside one skull that can fundamentally never talk to each other anymore.
Essentially, yes. That is exactly what is happening. And simply looking at this MRI scan, seeing that thick, white, glowing C shape sitting there, you suddenly realize that your entire unified feeling of self.
The feeling that I am just one cohesive person.
Right. Your singular identity is physically deeply dependent on that specific fragile bundle of fatty fibers just remaining intact.
It was profoundly humbling. It's ultimately just a specialized piece of meat, but it is holding our entire reality and identity together.
It is the biological glue of your consciousness.
Okay, let's keep going lower. Down below the C shape, below the dark ventricles.
We are entering the basement now.
Yes, there is a structure down here that basically looks like a thick stalk. It kind of looks like the rigid handle of a lollipop if the big wrinkly brain on top is the candy part.
That lower structure is the brainstem.
The brainstem. Now, just visually looking at the sagittal scan, this specific part looks very different from the rest.
How so?
It looks much simpler, more highly structural and rigid. It completely lacks the chaotic, complex wrinkles of the cortex up above.
That is because it is incredibly ancient machinery. We sometimes colloquially call it the reptile brain.
Reptile brain.
Evolutionarily speaking, this is by far the oldest part of you. We basically shared this fundamental basic core structure with lizards, birds, fish, almost all vertebrates.
And it has a few visually distinct parts, right? I clearly see a prominent rounded bulge right in the middle of the stalk.
Yes. So the brainstem is classically divided into three main distinct vertical sections. At the very top, closest to the center, is the midbrain.
Midbrain, okay.
Then moving down, you hit the pons. That is that prominent rounded outward bulge you just noticed. Interestingly, pons literally translates to bridge in Latin. And then right at the bottom, slowly tapering down until it seamlessly merges into the spinal cord, is the medulla oblongata.
The medulla oblongata. I feel like almost everyone casually knows that specific word solely because of the movie The Waterboy.
It's true, Adam Sandler has done wonders for keeping basic neuroanatomy in the public consciousness.
It's a great legacy.
But jokes aside, the actual critical function of this stalk is dead serious.
What does it actually do down there in the dark?
This is the critical server room that absolutely never ever shuts down.
Always online.
The cortex, the massive wrinkly part upstairs that expertly handles your deep thoughts, doing your taxes, dreaming about the future.
Right, the high-level human stuff.
But the brainstem, it fundamentally handles breathing, base heart rate, blood pressure regulation, sleep and wake cycles, basic digestion.
So this is the ultimate biological autopilot.
It is the pure keep-you-alive center. You can unfortunately suffer massive catastrophic damage to the upper cortical brain. You can be completely in a persistent vegetative state, essentially gone.
But the body stays alive.
As long as the basic brainstem remains structurally intact, the body will stubbornly keep breathing on its own. The heart will consistently keep beating. It functions entirely automatically without a single conscious thought.
It is the absolute baseline of biological existence.
It is the absolute baseline, and structurally, it is incredibly tightly packed.
Because everything has to go through it.
Exactly. Every single sensory signal traveling from your body up to the brain and every single motor command traveling from your brain down to your body has to physically funnel tightly through this one narrow stalk.
It is the ultimate terrifying bottleneck of information.
Yeah, massive critical bottleneck, yes.
Okay, now I want you to look right directly behind that brainstem, tucked neatly underneath the heavy back portion of the main brain.
I see it.
There is a completely separate structure sitting back there. And honestly, it looks completely alien compared to the rest.
Ah, you have spotted the cerebellum?
Yeah, the cerebellum. The main brain upstairs looks like big, thick rolling sausages or heavy folds. But this thing tucked at the back looks like it has incredibly fine, tight little lines all over it.
Very tightly packed.
Just dense horizontal striations. It looks like a completely different organ.
That is a highly accurate observation. Cerebellum actually literally translates to little brain in Latin.
Little brain, fitting.
And visually, yes, it is vastly distinct. It features a much tighter, denser folding pattern than the large cerebral cortex above it.
And when you look closely at it in the sagittal slice, cut right down the middle, the bright white matter inside it creates this breathtakingly beautiful branching pattern.
It is gorgeous, isn't it?
It naturally looks exactly like a fern leaf or a small, heavily branched tree frozen inside the tissue.
Yes. In anatomical terms, we actually beautifully call that specific pattern the arbor vitae.
The tree of life.
The tree of life. It visually looks exactly like a small tree hidden inside the cerebellum. And functionally, that specific, intricate structure is all about absolute precision.
What specific kind of precision are we talking about here?
Primarily physical movement, perfect balance, complex physical coordination.
Give me a concrete example so I can visualize it working.
Okay, think about this. If the cerebrum, the big boss brain upstairs, decides and says, I want to reach out and pick up that hot coffee cup on the desk.
That is the CEO making a high-level executive decision.
Exactly. But the CEO doesn't actually know practically which specific individual muscle fibers need to fire in your shoulder versus your elbow versus your delicate fingers to actually make that reach happen perfectly smoothly.
Right. If it was just the CEO, I would probably just aggressively smack the cup off the table.
Exactly. The CEO just broadly points and says, make it happen, team.
So the cerebellum steps in.
The cerebellum is the master operations manager. It instantly takes that vague command, actively calculates the complex physics, the required momentum, the current spatial position of your arm in 3D space.
All in a fraction of a second.
Yes, and it flawlessly orchestrates the perfect sequential firing of millions of microscopic motor units just to make that reaching movement fluid and accurate.
So anytime I see a professional athlete effortlessly catch a fastball or watch a concert pianist play a blisteringly fast, complex run, I'm basically just watching a highly trained cerebellum doing its job.
100%. And crucial muscle memory permanently lives down here too.
Like riding a bike.
Exactly like riding a bike. When you first try to learn, it's incredibly hard because you are awkwardly using your slow, conscious brain, the cerebrum, to actively try to maintain balance.
It's jerky and slow.
Right. But once you finally physically get it, the automatic running program is permanently offloaded down to the cerebellum. You literally never have to consciously think about balancing on a bike ever again.
It is amazing to vividly see it sitting right there on the scan, just quietly tucked away at the bottom back, keeping us all from clumsily falling over every day.
And I have a physiological statistic about the cerebellum that will probably completely blow your mind.
Oh, I am ready. Hit me.
By sheer physical volume, the cerebellum only makes up roughly about 10% of the entire brain's total size.
Okay, it is pretty small.
It is small, but incredibly, it actively contains roughly 50% of all the individual neurons in your entire central nervous system.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Half. 50% of all my neurons are crammed into that tiny little fern tree thing at the back of my neck.
Yes, half of them. That shocking density gives you a profound idea of just how ridiculously computationally expensive smooth physical movement actually is.
I never would have guessed that.
To simply physically move smoothly through the unpredictable physical world actually requires vastly more raw neurological processing power than sitting quietly and thinking about complex abstract philosophy.
That is just truly mind-blowing. We always arrogantly think of high-level thinking as the truly hard part of being human, but apparently just seamlessly walking across a rocky ruin is the real biological challenge.
Look at artificial intelligence. We have computers that can easily play grandmaster chess better than any human in history. But robotics engineers still have a remarkably hard time building a physical bipedal robot that can reliably walk on slightly uneven ground without falling over.
That really does tell you absolutely everything you need to know.
The little brain is an absolute biological marvel.
Okay, so we have essentially done the grand tour of the facility. We have seen the face, the outer cortex, the fluid ventricles, the connecting bridge, the vital stem, and the little brain.
A very comprehensive dive.
I really want to try and seamlessly put this all back together for the listener right now,
Good idea.
because we have purposefully been examining isolated flat 2D slices this whole time.
Right. We need to do a mental 3D reconstruction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I am the listener and I am dynamically scrolling through the axial scans, the top-down bread slices, let's slowly trace the complete journey, starting from the outside ear, moving directly inwards to the core. Let's build that 3D model in our collective heads.
Okay, that is a great spatial exercise. So let's logically start on the far outside lateral edge of the head.
Okay, I see the ear there on the scan. It just looks like a tiny little gray cartilaginous mushroom stuck on the side of the rigid skull.
Moving immediately inward from that ear, you instantly hit the hard skull bone, that distinct, bright, white, thick, continuous rim.
Got it. The outer armor.
And then,
Past the bone.
then you immediately enter the temporal lobes. That is the large side portion of the neocortex.
The specific areas where complex auditory processing mainly happens, right?
Yes, exactly what you as a listener are actively doing right this very second, listening to our two voices, is directly lighting up and stimulating your temporal lobes.
So they are hearing themselves be talked about.
Exactly. It is also critically crucial for deep language comprehension and forming new long-term memories.
Okay, keep moving steadily inward toward the deep center.
As you continuously go deeper, moving medially, you quickly pass those outer structures we discussed. The folding, deep, gray matter cities, the bright, branching white matter highways.
Slipping deeper into the dark.
And you might just start to hit the upper outer edges of those central black fluid-filled lakes of ventricles.
And then boom, right after that, you hit the exact midline, the deep longitudinal fissure.
A great divide.
And spanning across it, the thick white corpus callosum firmly connecting over to the far other side.
And then logically, if you keep scrolling, you just perfectly mirror that exact same journey, going steadily out the other lateral way until you hit the other ear.
It really profoundly helps to consciously think of it as a solid, unified 3D object.
Yeah.
And, one overarching thing that just keeps jarringly jumping out at me on almost every single slice is that thick, bright white boundary line.
The skull bone.
The skull, yes.
Yeah.
The armor. It looks incredibly dense and thick. But the soft brain right inside, it looks so remarkably fragile.
It is extremely delicate.
There is absolutely no wasted empty space in there.
Mm-hmm.
The tissue is packed right up firmly against the hard bone.
It is entirely filled, and dynamically, that absolute lack of extra space is a massive critical vulnerability for us.
A vulnerability.
Yes. We briefly mentioned the floating fluid cushion earlier, but there is essentially zero extra physical room in there for biological swelling.
Right.
Think about this. If you accidentally twist your ankle while running, it rapidly swells up to the painful size of a large grapefruit. And it really hurts, but ultimately it's perfectly fine. The swelling has empty space to freely expand outward into the air.
Right, it just gets bigger.
But if your deeply encased brain somehow gets injured and naturally tries to biologically swell,
It instantly hits the immovable bone.
it hits the unyielding bone. It physically has absolutely nowhere else to go. The internal pressure rapidly builds up instantly, and it brutally starts crushing its own delicate, healthy tissue against the heart skull.
Wow.
That is exactly why severe concussions and internal brain bleeds are so acutely life-threatening. The protective armor completely tragically becomes a deadly crushing cage.
It is just such an exquisitely tight fit in there.
It is an absolute zero-tolerance physical environment.
I kind of want to drastically zoom out a bit structurally here at the end.
Let's do it.
We have been very clinically literal so far, pointing and saying this specific part is the gray matter. This void is the ventricle.
Very anatomical.
But just quietly looking at all these ghost-like scans, there's a profound black box element to all of this, isn't there?
What exactly do you mean by a black box element?
Well, we can physically, vividly see the hippocampus area, which we know is intimately involved in forming memory.
Right, it's visible.
But we categorically cannot see the actual memory itself. I can't randomly look at, say, axial slice number 45 and point and say, oh, right there, that tiny little dark gray spot that is the specific memory of the time you awkwardly fell off your bike when you were 7 years old.
That is the ultimate fundamental limitation and, frankly, the beautiful poetry of structural MRI scanning.
Poetry.
Yes, we are simply looking at the Grand Library building. We
Yeah.
can clearly see the rigid wooden shelves. We can accurately count exactly how many shelves there are.
Right.
We can visually verify if a specific shelf is physically broken or dusty or missing. We can easily see if the vast library itself was structurally built correctly.
But we can't read the books.
Exactly. We absolutely cannot read the individual books.
That is such a perfect analogy.
We can precisely map the physical hardware. We can easily identify the frontal lobe right behind the forehead, which directly handles complex future planning and core personality traits.
But we can't visually see your personal ambition.
Precisely. We can't see your unique ambition. We can't visually locate your specific dry sense of humor. We can't physically pinpoint your deep, enduring love for your family.
Those abstract, invisible things are just quietly ghosting through the biological machine.
They are the dynamic, invisible software seamlessly running on top of this wet biological architecture.
Right.
And even if we used advanced functional fMRI, which dynamically tracks real-time blood flow changes when you actively think about something.
Which is a different type of scan than this PDF, right?
Yes, totally different.
Yeah.
But even with that advanced tech, we're still ultimately just observing exactly where the biological energy is currently being actively consumed. We still aren't actually seeing the subjective content of the specific thought.
It honestly makes just quietly looking at these static scans almost spiritual in a way.
I completely agree.
I definitely don't want to get too weird or overly woo-woo here, but you suddenly realize that absolutely everything that fundamentally makes a person a unique person is actively happening right there in this wet, gray, chunky biology.
Right there in the tissue.
And yet, staring right directly at the biology itself completely fails to explain the profound magic of it actually happening.
It directly, relentlessly brings up the ancient philosophical mind-body problem.
How so?
How exactly does cold physical matter somehow magically give rise to warm, subjective inner experience? Just looking deeply at these scans, you are literally staring directly blindly at that exact profound mystery.
It's all right there, but invisible.
You vividly clearly see the intricate molecules, but you absolutely do not see the mind.
And just thoughtfully thinking about The real anonymous human person who actually belongs to this specific scan in the Brand's PDF file.
We have no idea who they really are.
No, it's completely medically anonymized data.
Just a sequence of numbers.
But they actually exist. They have a real complex life. They have a favorite comfort food. They definitely have dark hidden secrets.
Like all of us.
And absolutely, all of that rich, vivid detail is permanently, silently locked inside this static black and white data set we are causally scrolling through.
And biologically speaking, if we theoretically scanned you right now, or scanned me, or scanned absolutely any listener actively tuning in right this second, the base physical architecture would be functionally nearly entirely identical.
Uncanny Valley.
The exact pattern of eight cortical folds might randomly vary just slightly, like a unique biological fingerprint, but the core machine itself is exactly the same.
We all have the exact same engine.
We all universally possess the ancient reptile brainstem, quietly, reliably keeping us constantly breathing in the dark.
Right.
We all universally possess the thick C-shaped bridge, actively, frantically connecting our two isolated halves. We all universally possess that beautiful branching tree of life hidden deep inside our cerebellum.
It is such a remarkably powerful, unifying reminder of our shared commonality. Beneath everything, we are literally all running the exact same biological hardware.
We absolutely are. And it is incredibly resilient, highly refined hardware that has been brutally, painstakingly iterated and refined over millions of slow years of evolution.
Millions of years of beta testing.
Exactly. When you look closely at that lower brainstem, you are physically looking directly at an ancient structure we literally biologically share with simple crawling lizards.
And the upper part.
When you look deeply at the massive folded outer cortex, you are directly looking at the uniquely incredible human biological expansion that actively lets us brilliantly build towering modern cities and compose sweeping symphonies.
It's all just physically layered right in there, like geological rock strata.
It is the entire evolutionary history of life neatly folded into one tiny skull.
So as we finally wrap up this incredible audio-visual tour of the human skull,
Yeah.
what is the absolute main single thing you want the listener to actively take away the absolute next time they casually look at themselves in the bathroom mirror?
Honestly, I deeply want them to clearly realize that they are emphatically not just superficially looking at a simple face.
What are they looking at?
They're looking directly at the fragile bone housing for literally the single most sophisticated, impossibly complex computational engine ever successfully built in the universe.
The ultimate machine.
And crucially, that this specific wet computer is incredibly resilient, but it is also terrifyingly physically fragile. It drastically, constantly needs proper care.
Care, you mean like maintenance?
Yes, biological maintenance.
Mhm.
Adequate deep sleep, proper daily hydration, physical protection from impacts.
Right.
You clearly visually saw those central fluid-filled ventricles in the scans. They desperately require adequate systemic water to efficiently work and flush out the daily toxins.
For drink your water, folks.
You vividly saw those sprawling, thick white matter connection highways. They require excellent, high-quality physical nutrition to continuously maintain that fatty myelin insulation layer.
It's an organ.
It is an active, hungry organ, just exactly like your beating heart or your expanding lungs. It needs care.
Treat the complex machine well or it breaks down.
Exactly. We routinely, unfortunately, tend to completely take our brains for granted, mostly because we intrinsically feel that we fundamentally are our brains.
It feels invisible to us.
It just seamlessly, smoothly feels like the concept of us, so we completely forget it is actual, delicate, biological, physical matter.
But it undeniably is.
But it intensely, undeniably is. And visually seeing it cleanly sliced up, layer by layer, completely exposed like this vividly, makes that absolute reality impossible to ignore.
For me personally, the biggest lingering takeaway image is definitively that raw look at the optic nerve.
Ah, the guys.
The incredibly weird, unsettling idea that my eyes are functionally just two literal, thick brain stalks completely sticking out of the front of my face solely to aggressively grab photons of light.
It is wild.
I am honestly never going to casually make eye contact with another human being the exact same normal way ever again.
It's definitely a little bit deeply unsettling once you actually functionally know the true anatomy, isn't it?
A little bit unsettling, but incredibly, endlessly fascinating.
And I would love to just actively add one final deep thought to all of this.
Go for it.
We talked at length about exactly how the outer cortex is heavily, painfully folded just to physically fit inside the tiny, rigid skull.
The crumpled tablecloth.
Right. I truly believe that specific physical tension, The constant biological tension between the completely limitless, infinite potential of the thinking human mind and the stark, unyielding physical constraints of the hard bone skull.
The armor.
Yes, that tension is essentially the ultimate defining central feature of the entire human existence.
Wow.
We are wonderfully, boundlessly infinite on the bright inside, but tragically, completely structurally finite on the dark outside.
That is incredibly deep. Infinite on the inside, finite on the outside.
That is ultimately what the stark black and white MRI shows us.
Yeah.
The desperate biological struggle to fit it all inside.
Well, on that profoundly heavy note, we are going to officially finally close the file on brains.pdf.
It's been an absolutely wild ride through the gray matter.
Indeed it has. A total absolute pleasure as always having you on.
The pleasure was entirely mine.
And to you actively listening out there right now, thanks for generously lending us your temporal lobes for the last hour.
We appreciate the bandwidth.
We truly, deeply hope we actively managed to spark some brand new electrical connections deep inside that sprawling white matter of yours today.
And hopefully we finally gave that constantly working little cerebellum a tiny brief break from desperately, constantly balancing you for a little while.
Exactly. Definitely put your feet up. You and your 50 billion neurons have definitely earned it.
Until the very next time.
We just spent an hour looking deeply at the most sophisticated, incredibly complex computer ever biologically built.
But here is the lingering final question for you. If we can flawlessly map absolutely every single tiny wire and every single deep fold with this incredible level of utter precision, are we actually ultimately looking at the true person, or are we just staring blankly at the physical housing? At exactly what microscopic resolution does pure physical biology suddenly become a unique lived biography?
Take excellent care of that precious gray matter, everyone.
See deep down in the next deep dive.
Most of the time, when we talk about software, we're really talking about tools.
Right. Things that help us do stuff.
Yeah, send emails, edit photos, the usual.
Yeah.
But the documents we're diving into today, they are something else entirely. We're looking at the complex elemental system, or CES. And it doesn't call itself an app or an OS.
No.
It calls itself a self-governing digital organism, which honestly sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It really does. And the core idea here is sovereign determinism.
Sovereign determinism.
Yeah. I mean, usually software gets messy because we're messy. We introduce bugs, we interrupt things. CES is designed to just eliminate that by making logic, quite literally, law.
Which sounds great, but it also sounds like a digital dictator doesn't negotiate.
It can't. It replaces human choice with mathematical necessity. If the math is wrong, that reality simply doesn't exist for the system.
Okay, so let's break down how it enforces that. Because the architecture alone is fascinating. It's got this core and shell design.
Right. A good way to think about it is like a biological cell. You have the nucleus, and then you have everything else around it.
And the nucleus here is the, let me get this right, the fractal Joule engine.
That's the one. And it's written in C99.
Old school. Really bare metal.
Exactly. It's rigid. It's unforgiving. That is the system's truth state. It handles the core math, the cryptography, the system's heartbeat, and it does not change.
And wrapped around that core.
You have the holistic code system. That's the shell. It's written in Python.
Much more flexible.
Yes. That's where the user's intent lives. But, and this is the key takeaway, it uses a clean architecture rule. The shell can look in at the core, but the core is completely blind to the shell. It can never rely on it.
So it's a glass box. You can see the truth, but you can't touch it from the outside.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But the part that really got me was how obsessed it is with just basic math. It refuses to use standard floating point numbers.
Oh, this is huge. For anyone who deals with data integrity, this is the whole game.
Explain that.
Okay, so most computers use floating point math. Think of it like scientific notation. The problem is different computer chips can have these tiny infinitesimal rounding differences.
Which causes drift, right? My computer says it's 1.0001 and yours says 1.0002.
Precisely. And over millions of calculations, that drift becomes a chasm. You end up with two different versions of reality.
So what does CES do?
It uses Q16.16 fixed-point arithmetic.
Okay.
Imagine you just lock the decimal point in place. You get 16 bits for the whole number, 16 bits for the fraction. That's it.
So a calculation on a laptop in, say, New York is bit for bit identical to one on a server in Antarctica.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Which leads right into their idea of absolute provenance.
Enforced by the root of trust.
Yes. Every single file, every piece of code is listed in one file. Manifest.shadow256.txt. If it's not on that list with a verified signature,
It doesn't exist.
to the system, it is invisible. It's a proactive denial of anything that isn't pre-approved.
I also love how it handles time. It doesn't trust a wall clock.
Wall clocks drift. They can be manipulated. So CES measures time in ticks.
Discrete state updates.
Exactly. It's a ledger-first system. If an event isn't in the history log, the ledger, it literally did not happen, period.
It's gaslighting proof. Okay, we have to talk about the governance names. They're amazing. You've got Jewelgate and the Golem Crab appendage.
The names are colorful, yeah, but the security concepts are dead serious. Jewelgate is the intake, where new states are proposed.
But the Golem Crab.
The Golem Crab is the actuator. It's the system's arm reaching out to affect the real world, writing a file, sending data.
But it's a one-way arm. That's the crucial part, isn't it?
It is the crucial part. It can push changes out, but it has no ability to write back into the core's truth state. It stops the messy outside world from corrupting the perfect internal logic.
And if you try to force it, if you break a rule,
The system engages what it calls sovereign silence.
which is just a very dramatic way of saying it shuts down.
It crashes itself on purpose. It's a fail-closed philosophy. Most apps today try to keep running at all costs, They'll catch an error and limp along.
Right.
CES says no. The moment I detect a lie, a constitutional violation, I stop.
Integrity is more important than uptime.
The refusal of the non-canon, it's like it boycotts its own existence if the data isn't pure.
And that all builds to this final idea of noospheric provenance.
Which means?
It means you don't have to trust the administrator. You don't have to trust the hardware. You only have to trust the math. Every single state transition is a verified, auditable truth.
It effectively weaponizes determinism, turns it into a security feature. And you have to admit, in a world of deepfakes and AI just making things up, there's something really appealing about a system that would rather die than lie to you.
It poses a really fundamental question. It suggests that maybe the only way to truly trust a digital system is if it's built from the ground up, with the ability to refuse to function the second it detects a falsehood. So is fail-closed the future of digital trust? That's the thought we'll leave you with. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.